The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Judge Hawthorne, a stern woman in her late 50s with a reputation for being uncompromising, peered down at the defendant over her glasses. Her lips curled into a faint smirk as she addressed him. "Mr. David Miller, you've chosen to represent yourself? You're aware the charges are grand theft auto and resisting arrest. These are serious offenses. Are you certain you don't want a real attorney? This isn't a game, young man." David Miller, a scrawny 18-year-old in a baggy hand-me-down suit, stood up. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie. He looked like every other teenager who'd made one bad decision too many, nervous, out of place, and clearly outmatched. The gallery chuckled softly. Even the prosecutor, a sharply dressed veteran named M.R. Grayson, allowed himself a smirk. But when David spoke, his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I understand the gravity of the situation. I've reviewed the evidence. I'm confident in my ability to defend myself." Judge Hawthorne raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Judge Hawthorne, confidence is one thing, Mr. Miller. Competence is another. Let's see how far your self-taught skills take you." Mr. Grayson stood, smoothing his tie. "Mr. Grayson, the state is ready to present its case, Your Honor. We have overwhelming evidence, including eyewitness testimony and video footage. This should be an open and shut case." David's heart pounded, but his face remained composed. He'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom, he was fighting to prove the system wrong. Grayson launched into his opening statement, then called his first witness. "Mr. Grayson, the prosecution calls Officer Daniels to the stand." A burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, Officer Daniels took the stand and recounted the arrest. "On the night in question, I received a report of a stolen black sedan. Upon arriving, I saw the defendant leaning into the driver's side window, appearing to hotwire the car. I identified myself and ordered him to stop. He fled on foot. After a brief chase, I apprehended him." David scribbled notes, his expression sharpened with focus. "David, standing. Officer Daniels, you said you saw me attempting to hotwire the car? Can you describe exactly what you saw?" "Officer Daniels, you were leaning into the window, holding a tool, fumbling with wires." "David, and how far were you from the vehicle at that point?" "Officer Daniels, about 20 feet. David paused, letting the answer settle. 20 feet? At night? You're certain you saw wires and a tool?" Daniels shifted in his seat. "Officer Daniels, yes. David, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?" Judge Hawthorne leaned forward, slightly more intrigued now. "Judge Hawthorne, proceed." David handed a photo to the officer. "David, officer, this is the interior of the car in question. Can you point out where the wires are?" Daniels squinted. "Officer Daniels, inside the dashboard." "Exactly. The wires are inside the dashboard, not visible through a closed window from 20 feet away, in the dark. So, how could you see me fumbling with wires?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "Mr. Grayson, objection, speculation." "David, Your Honor, if the prosecution's case relies on physically impossible observations, then the credibility of their narrative is in question." Judge Hawthorne raised an eyebrow. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Miller." "David, Officer Daniels, did you clearly identify yourself as a police officer before chasing me?" I believe I did." "You believe? Isn't it standard protocol to clearly identify yourself before pursuing a suspect?" "Yes, but—" "Thank you. No further questions." Daniel stepped down. The jury shifted in their seats, eyes darting among each other. Grayson called the next witness. "Mr. Grayson, the prosecution calls Mrs. Evelyn Thompson." A stern-faced middle-aged woman took the stand. "Inside the dashboard." "Exactly. The wires are inside the dashboard, not visible through a closed window from 20 feet away, in the dark. So how could you see me fumbling with wires? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Mr. Grayson. Objection. Speculation. Your Honor, if the prosecution's case relies on physically impossible observations, then the credibility of their narrative is in question. Judge Hawthorne raised an eyebrow. Judge Hawthorne. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Miller. David. Officer Daniels, did you clearly identify yourself as a police officer before chasing me? I believe I did. You believe? Isn't it standard protocol to clearly identify yourself before pursuing a suspect? Yes, but thank you. No further questions. Daniels stepped down. The jury shifted in their seats, eyes darting among each other. Grayson called the next witness. The prosecution calls Mrs. Evelyn Thompson. A stern-faced, middle-aged woman took the stand. Mrs. Thompson, I parked my car outside my house that night. The next morning, it was gone. I reported it stolen. Later that day, the police found it, with the defendant inside. David approached for cross-examination. David, Mrs. Thompson, did you see anyone take the car? No, I was asleep. When the police recovered it, was there any sign of forced entry? Broken windows? Damaged locks? No, the car was intact. So the vehicle was stolen without any signs of entry. How do you think the thief got in? I don't know. Maybe they had a key? How many people have access to your car keys? Just me and my husband. David let the silence linger for a beat. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. No further questions. She stepped down. David turned to the judge. Your Honor, the defense calls Mr. James Thompson, Mrs. Thompson's husband. Grayson sprang up. Objection! This witness was not disclosed. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson's testimony is essential. The prosecution has had ample time and resources. The truth should not be obstructed by procedure. Judge Hawthorne studied him for a moment. Judge Hawthorne. Overruled. Call your witness. James Thompson, a tall, uneasy man in his 40s, took the stand. David. Mr. Thompson, do you own a black 2012 Nissan Sentra? Yes. Do you keep a spare key anywhere? Yes, in the glove box. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. David seized the moment. David. So, anyone who accessed the car had access to the key. No need to hotwire, no broken locks. That would explain why the vehicle was intact. Your Honor, this casts serious doubt on the assumption that I stole the car, and undermines the central narrative of the prosecution. He turned toward the jury, his voice calm but firm. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for fairness. All I've done is insist on the truth. You've seen the facts. Now it's your turn to decide whether this system works or just assumes. He returned to his seat. The courtroom was silent. Even Judge Hawthorne wasn't doodling anymore. The air in the courtroom was heavy with tension. Every seat was filled. Spectators leaned forward. The judge, a stern woman in her late 50s, known for her no-nonsense rulings, peered over her glasses at the young man standing at the defense table. Judge, dryly. Mr. David Miller, you've chosen to represent yourself in a case involving grand theft auto and resisting arrest. Are you sure you don't want a real attorney? This isn't a game, young man. David, 18, thin, nervous, dressed in an oversized suit clearly meant for someone else, stood shakily. His voice, however, was steady. Your Honor, I understand the seriousness of these charges. I've reviewed the evidence, and I believe I'm capable of defending myself. The judge raised an unimpressed brow. Confidence is one thing. Competence is another. Let's see how far you get. The prosecutor, Mr. Grayson, stood. Sharp suit, sharper tongue. Your Honor, the state is ready. We have eyewitness testimony and video evidence. This will be an open and shut case. David's heart pounded, but his expression remained calm. He had studied every document, dissected every second of footage. This wasn't just about proving his innocence. It was about exposing the cracks in a system that never gave him a chance. The state calls Officer Daniels. Officer Daniels, a burly man with a military haircut, took the stand. On the night in question, I received a report of a stolen black sedan. When I arrived, I saw the defendant attempting to hotwire the vehicle. I identified myself and ordered him to stop. He ran. I gave chase and apprehended him. David took notes, then stood for cross-examination. David: Officer Daniels, you say you saw me attempting to hotwire the car. Can you describe what exactly you saw? You were leaning into the driver's side window, holding what looked like a tool, fumbling with wires. How far were you when you made this observation? About 20 feet. David paused. Let it hang. 20 feet. At night? Through a window? You're certain you saw me handling wires? Daniels shifted in his seat. Yes. David approached with a photograph. This is the interior of the car. Officer, can you point to the wires you claim I was tampering with? Daniels looked at the photo, then frowned. They're inside the dashboard. Exactly. Not visible from the outside. So how could you see me fumbling with wires through a closed window from 20 feet away? The courtroom buzzed. Objection! Speculation! Your Honor, if the prosecution's case relies on observations that defy physical possibility, how can they be trusted? The judge leaned forward, intrigued. Overruled. Proceed. David: Officer, did you clearly identify yourself before chasing me? I believe I did. You believe? Isn't it standard procedure to clearly identify yourself? Yes, but no further questions. Daniel stepped down. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Grayson: The state calls Mrs. Thompson, the car's owner. Mrs. Thompson, mid-50s, stern, took the stand. I parked my car outside my house. The next morning, it was gone. I reported it stolen. Later that day, the police found it, with the defendant inside. David stepped up to cross. David: You didn't see the theft occur? No, I was asleep. Was the car damaged? Broken windows? Forced locks? No, it was intact. So no signs of forced entry. Any idea how someone got in? Maybe they had a key. How many people have access to your car keys? Just me and my husband. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. James Thompson, Mrs. Thompson's husband. Objection. The defense did not disclose this witness. Your Honor, his testimony is essential. The prosecution had every opportunity to fully investigate. The judge studied David, then nodded. Judge: Overruled. Call your witness. Mr. Thompson, tall and jittery, took the stand. David: Mr. Thompson, do you have access to the car keys? Yes. Did you lend the car to anyone that night? He glanced nervously at his wife. Mr. Thompson: I lent it to my nephew, Alex. He had a date. Gasps. Mrs. Thompson was stunned. David: So the car wasn't stolen. It was borrowed. Did you tell the police? No, I didn't think it was relevant. David turned to the jury. The state charged me with grand theft auto, but the car was never stolen. It was lent to a relative. This entire case is built on a false premise. Frustrated. The defendant was still found in the car without permission. Firmly. Without permission from whom? Not the legal owner, not the man who loaned it out. Their case collapses under its own weight. The judge leaned back, now fully engaged. Judge: Continue. The state calls Detective Harris. Detective Harris, seasoned and composed, took the stand. Harris: We have security footage of the defendant entering the car that night. It places him at the scene. David stood for cross. David: Does the footage clearly show my face? Harris: No, the image is grainy, so you can't conclusively identify me. Harris: No, but the figure matches your build. David walked to the stand with a printout. Detective: This is a still from the footage. Can you point out my face? Harris: Looking? No, as I said, it's unclear. Then your key evidence doesn't prove I was the one entering the car. Did you investigate Alex Thompson? Harris: No, we focused on you based on the initial report. Thank you. No further questions. The jury whispered. The case was disintegrating. But the judge leaned forward. Judge: You've raised serious doubts about the theft charge, Mr. Miller, but what about resisting arrest? You ran from an officer, Explain that. David took a deep breath. David, Your Honor, I'd like to call Alex Thompson to the stand. Objection! This is another surprise witness. Alex's testimony directly addresses the resisting arrest charge. If the state didn't do their homework, that's not my fault. The judge eyed David, then nodded. Judge, overruled. Bring him in. Judge, overruled. Call your witness. Alex Thompson, a lanky teenager, walks nervously to the stand. He avoids eye contact with his aunt and uncle. David Miller, representing himself, rises. David, gentle but direct. Alex, on the night in question, did you borrow your uncle's car? Alex, quietly. Yeah, I needed it for a date. David, and what happened afterward?
I parked it near my house. When I came back, it was gone. I thought maybe it got towed or something.
Did you report it missing?
No, I didn't want to get in trouble for taking it without asking.
So the car wasn't stolen. It was borrowed by Alex and left unattended. When I found it, I was trying to return it to its rightful owner.
Objection, Your Honor. This doesn't excuse the fact that he ran from an officer.
David, without missing a beat.
Alex, one more question. Did you see anyone near the car when you left it? Yeah, there was this guy nearby. Looked kinda sketchy. I didn't think much of it, but now I wonder if he took it. Gasps and murmurs ripple through the courtroom. David, to the judge. Your Honor, this testimony confirms the car wasn't stolen and raises doubts about who actually took it. Now, I'd like to address the resisting arrest charge.
The judge leans forward, intrigued.
Judge, proceed, Mr. Miller.
David, calmly.
The night I was arrested, Officer Daniels approached me in plain clothes. No uniform, no badge. I thought he was the man Alex saw near the car. I believed I was about to be mugged. That's why I ran. I wasn't resisting arrest. I was protecting myself.
The courtroom goes silent. The jury leans in. The prosecutor says nothing. David paces slowly, building momentum.
I'd like to call my final witness, myself.
Judge, eyebrows raised.
You wish to testify on their own behalf? Yes, Your Honor. I believe it's time the jury hears everything.
Into witness stand, moments later.
David, composed, members of the jury. I never meant to break the law. That night, I saw a car with the keys in the ignition and the door ajar. I looked around, called out, and leaned in. Suddenly, someone shouted and charged at me. He didn't say he was a cop. No badge, no ID. I panicked. I ran. That's the truth. Beat. He looks at the jury. David, passion rising. I didn't understand why I was arrested. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't meant any harm. But the system treated me like I was guilty before I ever got to speak. So I learned the law. I studied the evidence. I stood up, not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever been crushed under the weight of a mistake or a misunderstanding. This case isn't just about me. It's about fairness. It's about truth. And it's about making sure justice doesn't only belong to those who can afford it.
The room is still. Even the judge seems moved.
Judge, thank you, Mr. Miller. Prosecutor, do you wish to cross-examine?
Prosecutor, grasping.
Mr. Miller, you claim you didn't know Daniels was a cop? Isn't it more likely you ran to avoid getting caught? David, steady. No, sir. I had no idea he was a police officer. If he'd identified himself properly, none of this would have happened.
The prosecutor sighs and sits. The judge turns to the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard the testimony. We will reconvene tomorrow for your verdict.
Into courtroom the next morning. The gallery is packed. David sits at the defense table, his hands clasped. The jury files in. Judge, has the jury reached a verdict? Foreman, we have, Your Honor. He stands, unfolds a slip of paper. Foreman, on the charge of grand theft auto, we find the defendant not guilty. Gasps, whispers. David closes his eyes, exhales. Foreman, on the charge of resisting arrest, we find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom erupts. Cheers, disbelief, scattered applause. The judge bangs the gavel. Order! Order in the court! Silence falls again. She turns to David. Mr. Miller, you are acquitted on all charges. You are free to go. David rises, stunned. David. Thank you, Your Honor. Judge, softening. What you did here today was extraordinary. You exposed failures in our system. I sincerely hope you consider law school. We need more advocates like you. David, smiling slightly. Thank you. I'll think about it. Excel. Courthouse. Day. David steps into the sunlight. Reporters swarm. He keeps walking. Alex, approaching sheepishly. David, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It's not your fault. The system failed us both. But maybe now it'll start to change. Alex, so what's next? David, looking up at the sky. Law school, maybe. If I can do this without a degree, imagine what I could do with one. Alex, grinning. You're gonna change the world. David laughs. Maybe. But for now, I'm just glad it's over. He walks off, a man transformed, not just by the trial he survived, but by the fight he won.